Welcome to Anarchykart Part 2. In this episode we're going to show you how to wire your kart up and also how to deal with the wheels and tyres. Time to talk steering wheel controls. Now, steering wheel controls are really important for the MSVA because you are not allowed to remove your hands from the steering wheel to activate your horn or your indicators. So, these are actually from a motorbike. They are a universal set of them. They were £16 online, so they haven't broken the bank. And what you need to have is certain functionality, so make sure you don't just jump the gun and order the first thing. Now, you need to be able to turn your lights on and off, so you need to have an on and off switch on them. The other thing that you need to have are a hazard switch. So this has got a hazard switch on it. Because it's four wheels or a heavy duty quadricycle, it needs to have hazards. The other thing it needs to have is a horn. So you need to have a horn switch on there, and you also need to have your indicators, dipped and main beam. So once you've found all that functionality, those are the ones that you need. Now, the wires I'm going to run behind the steering wheel here. I'm not actually going to put any fancy loops on the back of it because the steering wheel only runs that far. They're not going to get twisted if I leave just enough slack on the back of them. It's time to talk wheels and tyres. Now, wheels and tyres have been quite a hard part about the Anarchykart, mainly because they all run a 5-inch rim. Now, on a 5-inch rim, we can't find a not for highway use tyre. If you bear in mind all of the go-karts run on a slick tyre, or if you have English weather, we run on wet. Now, what I'm actually going to go with is these. Now, these are off what's called a gearbox kart. Now, the gearbox kart has the option of 5-inch or 6-inch rims. Now, this is a 6-inch rim with the 3 holes in the centre, so that'll then work with my brakes. And I've also used 4 front rims because they then match the tyres that I'm going to use. Now, the other option is, because these are quite expensive, you can actually, and I have measured this, if you look at your centre holes and measure them up, you can actually use some quad rims. Now, quad rims, there's a few different hole sizes, but you can match them up and they will then match up with the tyres that we're going to use as well. So just do your homework, do your measurements and find out which ones fit your kart. Now, the tyres that I'm going to use are actually these. Now, these are a 6-inch tyre on the centre, but they're actually off an LT50 quad. Now, the LT50 did have the option to be made road legal. So these have the all-important E mark on the tyre, so these will be able to go on the road and get our go-karts on the road through the MSVA. Right, I've never fitted tyres like this before, but I'm going to show you how I've kind of got into a bit of a rhythm doing it. Now, I managed to get some of these from my local tyre depot. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Jed. And basically, you pop one of these valves in here. These are a short valve, being a kart. You screw this little device onto the valve. It's actually a lot harder than you'd think. Screw that on there. And then you pull the valve into place. So then that's got a new valve in there. Now, apparently you go for a short one because it's only a little wheel, so it's going to spin faster, so it's less likely to damage. Now, putting tyres on. This is obviously something I definitely have not mastered. So all I've been doing with these is putting them over and then kind of leaning on them until they go in. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but this is the last tyre, so it's worked for the other 3, and I'm just going to keep pushing on it until it's on. Now, the hard bit with these seems to be actually getting them to pop on the bead, because the rims on the front are 120mm wide. The tyres are 145, so they are quite large. But what's happened is during the packaging, the bead has been compressed on the tyres, so they should be absolutely wanting to go out, but they're not. So once these tyres are popped on, that's it. The wheels are all road legal, and so are the tyres. So that is another job crossed off, and it's another step closer to the MSVA. Right, here comes the hard bit, trying to get some air in this thing. So, as you can see, we've got a very loose rim in here. What I've got to do is get some compressed air on here and keep your fingers out the way. Do not have your fingers in this. So, the way to do it is to kind of squash the tyre down. So what you want to do is squash it around the bead, and that will manipulate it to the outer edge. The more you can bend and flex it and pull on it before you start putting air in, the easier it's going to be. So it's kind of softening the tyre back up. So Try and put some air in. Right, so that is the last wheel done. The measurement on these, if you are looking for them, is a 145 by 70 by 6 inch. And what you've got to look out for on these tyres is your E mark. The E mark is what the DVLA are going to look for on your test, because that E mark then says that this is suitable to go onto the road or the highway. Right, so all I'm going to do now is actually bolt the remaining wheels up to the kart. Now, the other thing that we need to have a look at is we've had the panels painted. Now, all of them have been done beautifully by Lee Morgan Artworks, but we need to see if the wheels are going to touch them on full lock, or even if the rear wheels will pass them, because the rear wheels are very close to the back bumper. Now, because of that, we may be better taking this for MSVA without the panels on, because then it can go as an unbodied vehicle. So it goes under a heavy quadricycle either bodied or unbodied. That's up to the DVLA, but if we don't take any body panels on it, it'll go as unbodied, and then they're looking for different things on it. But the main thing we need to look for is it going to scrub? Because that will determine whether we put them on for the test or not. I think you'll agree, I've definitely created a very cool looking off-road buggy, or dirt buggy with this little idea. It's giving it massive ground clearance. We've got road legal wheels on it now. We've got brakes on the front. So it's time to move on to the electrics. So it's time to tackle the rear lights on this. Now, there's a few requirements that this has to get through the MSVA. Now, first of all, have a read of yours again, because obviously I'm designing this for mine. You might want it slightly different. But the few rules are, if the vehicle is less than 1.3 meters wide, which this is, it's about 120, you only need one rear light. So nice and simple, one rear light. Now, the height requirement on this is minimum 250 millimeters, which puts it on this around about here, ideal. Now, the difference is though, the indicators, they need to be 350 millimeters. So that puts them around about here. So they've got two different height requirements. Nice and simple, and we'll wire those in a minute. Now, a couple of other things about my brake light here. Now, this is a standard rear light, a brake light, and a number plate light. So it crosses off three things in one go. So if you make sure that it has all three of those requirements, you've only got one light to wire in. So I'm going to start mounting these on the back here. This light was only £8 and these were only £10 for a pair. Right, so here's what I've currently made. So this was actually just a random piece of plastic I had lying around. It's got an edge on it there and it's got one there. That means that I can attach it onto the back there, and that gives me my height. Now, just so you're aware here, in case your back is different, you've also got to give a place for the number plate to go. So you can't have this dangling down with nowhere to actually hang the number plate beneath. So I've put it there where the number plate or the number on the go-kart would normally hang. So that will give me my spot for it to go when it's registered. So that's it. Brake light is now mounted on the back. Now, I know some people are not going to like the fact that this is kind of made of scrap material, and I've kind of pieced it together from bit odds and ends, but I'm doing it as a budget build. I want you to be able to look at this and think, do you know what? I've got some scrap, I've got some plastic, and I can put some things together. If you bear in mind, you have to have rounded edges on this, so this has a rounded edge all the way around. But look at it the other way. What if you've got an old pallet around the back of your house? You could go and get a piece of wood and literally make the bracket that I just have. I'm trying to show you how easy it is to get something registered through the MSVA, including this. So, next thing to do is actually the indicators. I've had an idea. Famous last words time now. Now, I've been looking at the indicator and where I can actually mount this on the back, and I've had an idea. So, what I'm going to do is, this was going to be a later project, is actually putting the mud guards on, because this has to have mud guards on all four corners. But if I mount the mud guards here, this is a very similar position to where the indicators want to be. So once I've got these mounted, I can look at whether I want to put them on the bracket themselves or even on the top of the mud guard. But then, job done. There we go, that is the first mudguard done and the first indicator mounted as well. I've made this little bracket out of some aluminium I had lying around that was left from the Anarchy stang. And then these mudguards, I managed to get these online. I got a set of 4 for less than £20. So, little mudguard on top, bolted it through. I'm going to run the wires back down the bracket and across, and that's it. We've got an indicator. Right, you've just seen me make the last mudguard for the rear. Now, this looks like a bit of a lollipop stick. Now, a few things just to point out. First of all, you saw me flatting all of the edges on the aluminium. Now, the reason that's so important are the DVLA, when this goes for an MSVA test, they are looking for dull edges. That's why this go-kart, same as racing, all the edges are dulled. So, if you just file off anything that could potentially be a sharp edge, it's going to be a lot quicker and easier. The other thing you may have noticed, these little bolts. Now, I actually bought a motorbike fairing bolt kit, so it was just to change them all to black. And as I've gone through, obviously, it matches the aluminium, they're nice and lightweight, and all of the edges are already dulled, so nice and easy. Now, the next thing is the lights themselves. Now, these lights have an E mark on them. I know I spoke to you about that on the tyres as well. Now, the reason I would say this is so important, what they're going to look for on the MSVA is it to have a CE or an E mark. So if they've all got the marking on, they're not going to start measuring them, they're not going to start checking them, they're going to see the mark and they're going to move on. And that's what we want. We want them, every single thing to be road compliant so there's no hiccups. I'm sure there will be there. And there we have it. All of the lights are mounted on the back. We've got your 2 indicators, we've got your mudguards as well, which I've kind of jumped forward on, and we've also got your rear, brake and number plate light all wired in one. Now, the main thing that I sought out after this was I didn't want this to stop looking like a go-kart. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but the problem when you start doing this, it can start to look like a car. It can start to turn into a buggy or an ATV or something a bit different. So I think I've actually kept the look of it. Now, first of all, E-marked. I'm going to go back to them. This is E-marked. This is E-marked. The mudguards are E-marked. Make sure these things are E-marked. You don't have to, but it's going to make it a lot easier when it comes to test day for you. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this, if you actually buy a 4-foot trailer board, that has the perfect measurements for one of these go-karts. So you can mount it on a board across there. It's about level with the engine, if you want to know, or 350 millimeters from when the go-kart sat on the floor. You can mount that across the back, job done when you've wired it in. You've got all the curved edges and all E-mark lights. But I wanted to do it this way, same as you can build your own. Now the rear lights are all mounted, I'm going to start running the wires all the way forward. So I'm hoping to actually earth the car out from the battery, so it will be an earth everywhere. The only thing is with where these rear indicators are, I'm going to have to run the earth down onto the chassis before I can drop those into an earth. But then the power leads I can run all the way forward and try and make a bundle to actually wire this thing up. So that's it, all the wiring loom is now finished. Now if this seems like too big a task for you, or you just don't want to take it on because it is quite time consuming, keep an eye out on the Anarchy Garage eBay account. What we're having done is this wiring loom is actually getting copied. Now the copy is going to be available for you to purchase, so you'll be able to drop it onto your kart frame based on these measurements and just cable tie it onto your frame. Now as well as that, cable tying it on. You need to cable tie this on at every 10 centimetre intervals. The reason being is you don't want anything to be able to trip, snag or trip you up if you're getting in or out of the car. That is an MOT failure and also the MSVA will not like it. Right, as you'll see, I've now mounted the battery on the side of the kart as well. What I've done is actually made a little box frame, put a strap around it and mounted it on this side. The reason being, it gave it good symmetry to the handbrake to keep the weight balanced a little bit, but also this needs to be secured in. You can't just cable tie this to the frame, it's got to be properly secured in so it won't go anywhere. Again, if you look on eBay or any kart forums, you'll be able to see an actual kart battery bracket, and you'll be able to bolt that onto the side of your frame so it makes wiring much simpler.